Good morning, everybody. This is the sermon for the 3rd of May 2020, and it comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verses 1 to 10. May the words of my mouth and the meditation from my heart be pleasing to you, my God, my rock and my Redeemer. Amen. I could remember as a child knowing the sound of a laughing or crying sibling from the other end of the house because I was familiar with their voice. Parents are good at recognising their child's voice in a crowded room, and it's the same in the animal kingdom. When we were in Israel, we witnessed a shepherd in a crowded sheepfold calling his sheep one by one and naming them. Because of the time he spent with them, he knew their markings, likes and dislikes, characters, but more importantly, they knew him. The bond is close and special. They trust him with their lives to protect them from danger, like wolves that will prey on them, and in turn the shepherd protects the sheep. No sheepdogs to keep the sheep in order in the Holy Land, just the faithful shepherd, leading them ahead, calling them to follow. This was a very powerful experience and vision to see, as it reminded me of Jesus, our Good Shepherd. In the opening verses, we get a clear sense that Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, whom he has in previous parts of John's Gospel, for example, chapter 9, verse 41, accused them of being blind because they refused to believe in him. When Jesus speaks and says, "Very truly I tell you," it's his way of getting our attention because he wants us to be open to his teaching, and he often uses figurative language or a parable to bring the message home. In this reading, there are two parts to the parable. Firstly, the gate of the sheepfold, and then the shepherd of the sheep. Sheepfolds were built in stone and were square-shaped and straight out in the fields or near houses to protect them from bandits or thieves, with a single gate used to let the sheep in and out. If there was no gate, the shepherd himself would sleep across the gateway, and sometimes brambles were used to close off the opening at night. In the morning, the shepherd from the gate would call his sheep, and recognizing his voice, the sheep would follow. The shepherd sometimes used special names for his sheep, and he always led them from the front. And if a stranger spoke to them, they'd run away because they knew their shepherd's voice. I'm reminded of the words from the hymn we will listen to later, and some of you may choose to sing from Together in Song 659. The Lord is my shepherd, and I want to follow. Wherever he leads me, wherever he goes. Over the mountains, the waters and byways, valleys and highways, he's waiting for me. I want to go to meet him there, to lay myself down in his love. The Lord is my shepherd, and I want to follow. Wherever he leads me, wherever he goes. And while on the journey to where we are going, he promised to be there to help us along. And over the mountains, we'll walk on together to know all the wonders he gives to me. I want to go to meet him there, to lay myself down in his love. The Lord is my shepherd, and I want to follow. Wherever he leads me, wherever he goes. Alas, because Jesus uses figurative language, the Pharisees have no idea he's talking about them. So Jesus then explains the parable of the sheepfold in John 10, 3b to 5. To them, they still refuse to believe in Jesus. Firstly, he explains the meaning of the gate and then the meaning of the shepherd. When Jesus teaches like this, it is called an allegory, which gives meaning to the individual details in the parable. A parable such as this one compares a known situation, in this case the sheepfold, with what is not known, that is the life and relationship that is found in Jesus. Jesus addresses first his listeners, his disciples, then us. The Pharisees have also been included in the teaching that he is the gateway of the sheepfold, and those others, the chief priests and Pharisees, are bandits and thieves through their opposition of his mission and teaching, just as the Romans were, or the house of Herod. Today, we can be bandits and thieves when we sell ourselves for money, ignore the poor and oppressed, close our eyes to the plight of others suffering in other countries. The list can be endless. I'm sure you can think of many examples to add to mine. Jesus is the gate through which salvation comes to us. He is the shepherd who will lead us into green pastures, offering us the living bread and water and life-giving light. He comes from God, and he does the work of God. He is his Son. It's hard for us to understand the depths of this parable because we think differently to the Bible's picture of the shepherd and the sheep. was often used as a referral, in fact, to the king and his people. In Isaiah 34, we read about the ideal king being a shepherd, perhaps modelled on the shepherd boy David, who became king and was after God's own heart. Jesus, our shepherd, is also our king, and our relationship with him as his shepherd means we are in kingship with him. I know some people don't like the word king for Jesus, but in this instance, it is meant to describe the background to the shepherd image as today. Anyone who is a ruler might look more like the boss of a successful corporate company. Jesus is God's true king to the nation Israel. We are the sheep and the shepherd's priority. We need to listen to the voice of the shepherd. He will always point us to God. His voice will teach us how to pray, how to be an example of faithful Christians living out the 2 great commandments. The shepherd will guide us, lead us, teach us, and instruct us in the ways of God. The shepherd loves his sheep dearly. After all, we are his Father's children also. As Desmond Tutu writes in his book, In God's Hands, our names are engraved on God's palms. Never forget that. God's kingdom, God's King Jesus is our shepherd. Amen.
And now our service continues by clicking the link below.